Timbercrest Seniors for Peace video program. I am Gary Heisler, member of the Seniors for Peace Steering Committee. Videos of our recent programs can be found on YouTube by entering Timbercrest Seniors for Peace in the YouTube search box. Today's program focuses on the Journey of Hope organization. Our guests are Bob Gross, Executive Director, and Reverend Crystal Walker, Board Member. Bob is well known for his work with peace and justice organizations, including On Earth Peace, which is affiliated with the Church of the Brethren. Welcome to you both. Bob, I'm going to turn the program over to you now, and you can introduce Crystal.
Okay, thank you. And it's good to be with you all. Seniors for Peace is an important group, and I appreciate your interest in this topic of abolishing the death penalty and in the Journey of Hope organization, which is led by family members of murder victims. It's been, well, Rachel and I have been involved in this work against the death penalty for a long time, and mainly in the areas of public advocacy and public education. And in many ways, the uniquely most important voice in this movement has been the voice of family members of murder victims. And that's who leads the Journey of Hope, along with people who have been found innocent of the murder they were convicted of, along with people who have loved ones in prison for murder as well. But our board includes all of those categories, and I'm very happy that Reverend Crystal Walker can be with us for this program. She's a member of our board. She's the director of Greater Dayton Christian Connections, ecumenical group in Dayton, Ohio. And I'll let her explain how she's involved with the journey and the experiences that bring her to this place.
Thank you so much, Bob. I want to start by saying how I got involved with Journey of Hope. There was a mass murder in Dayton. Don't ask me the year, just a few years back. It's years kind of mend together now with COVID and when we were active and when we're not active and what's going on. But just a few years ago, there was a mass murder in Dayton, actually 2 blocks down the street from where I'm sitting right now. And Reverend Dr. Jack Sullivan came to Dayton, Ohio to host a prayer vigil over that and to also talk about victim family members. We had some that were in attendance at a church that he came to talk to us about it. He's actually a pastor in the same denomination that I'm in, the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. And some of the victim family members that spoke were actually victim family members of those who had been murdered at the Oregon District shooting. And then there was kind of a roundtable discussion that happened afterwards. And Dr. Sullivan spoke about his sister being murdered, and I spoke about my son that had been murdered in 2013. So in 2013, my son Edward, who was 28 years old, was murdered, senseless shooting. And we had just got together, and I felt that this was an act of God. We had just been together. This happened on May 6th. We had just been together on May 1st with the whole family. My daughter came up from Florida. My son was in from Indianapolis, and then my son that lived in Dayton that was murdered was here in Dayton. We were over at my father's house. My son wanted to give his not quite 2-year-old daughter a gift where we could all see her play with it. It was one of those little electric cars where you just ran it through. I took video of that on my phone, took lots of pictures because everyone was there. And this is just the best memory that I have because I still have all those pictures and videos of when my son was still alive that Thursday before the incident came in. So I got a call early in the morning from all sorts of people, and I really didn't even hear the phone. I had my cell phone on silent, but my husband woke up at 2:30 in the morning to go to work then, and he's now retired, but at 2:30 in the morning, he woke up. And I got up, looked at my phone, saw all of these missed calls from my son and my parents and everything. And I thought, naturally, there's something that happened to my father, who's in his 80s now. And that wasn't the case. They were calling to tell me that my son had been murdered. I did not believe it. Couldn't believe that had happened. Called my husband, who had already taken off from work, and he turned around and came back. And my son and my stepdaughter, who lived in Indianapolis, we all left for our journey to Dayton to find out that that was, in fact, the case, what had happened. And as well as being shocked and extremely depressed, and not even wanting to see the church members that came to church that came over, the church elders that came over. I didn't want to hear the same scripture. I didn't want to hear about, my son was in a better place. I didn't want to hear any of this. I just wanted my son to be back at home. Then came all of the police questioning me. The police know who murdered my son. I know who murdered him, but they can't find any strong evidence or to actually try the case. So that it's not been tried. The police came over, they started questioning me, and they wanted me to actually go over a known gang member's house and consult with them and to see if I could get, reaching for a tissue, to see if I could get any evidence or to have gang members talk to me. And I didn't think that was a great idea, and neither did my husband. And I can tell you that I was very, very angry. I didn't come to Journey of Hope with the forgiveness thing down pat. I came to Journey of Hope because it's a journey to forgive. It's a journey to know that I would like justice to be served, but I would not want another mother or father or brother or sister or friend or loved one, grandparents, to go through what we went through in our family, the pain, the hurt. And I think executions are just that. They're executions, they're murder. They're killing someone, and it doesn't have to be like that. I continued through the journey knowing that, and wanted to say this too, that my son was executed. I've been in Kairos prison ministry for eons. I can't even think of when I began, but it was in the 90s. And the prison that I ministered to is actually 2 blocks from where my son was murdered. So I've been there, and I've been with women, and we've spoken, about God's healing forgiveness and how your past doesn't necessarily define you, that you can make choices. And I truly believe that. So part of the journey that I've been on is to know that persons that have done absolutely horrible, horrendous things can be healed. They can go on to be great persons, examples of God's forgiveness in someone else's life, even when we are still going through the process of forgiveness. So after my son's murder, which was in May I volunteered for a Kairos event that was happening again two blocks up from where my son was murdered. I volunteered for another Kairos event, and God decided he was going to test me on this whole death penalty thing. And we don't know who particularly we're going to sit with at the Kairos event, which inmates are going to be around us. There's 6 of them. So at the table that I sat at and was spiritual director, there were 6 inmates there, 3 of whom had murdered someone. One who sat next to me all the way through the weekend until I gave my talk at the very end. And I was actually talking about my journey through my son's death. When I came back to the table, she said, "Would you mind telling me your son's name?" And I told her, and she says, "I know him." She says, "He got me out of a dark place when I wanted to kill myself." So God sent her to sit next to me, that wasn't pre-assigned, to let me know that my son's legacy lived on. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so opposed with the death penalty. Want to tell 2 more quick stories. One was when I was in seminary, and this is before all of this happened with my son. When I was in seminary, I was taking a course where we were doing case studies, and one of the case studies was on the death penalty. And I was in opposition of the death penalty even then. So when my professor came to me, says, you're only in opposition to the death penalty because nothing has ever happened in your family that you would say, sure, you would be a different person if that happened in your family. Well, I'm not. It happened, and I'm not. Still opposed to the death penalty as I was back then. Second quick story is, since I was a teenager and people were being executed and they were talking about it on television, I would always get physically sick to my stomach when someone was executed, because it's wrong and it does no good. It does not heal anyone that's had a loved one taken away, and it does more harm to society. And with that, I'm done.
Crystal, maybe you could say a little bit about the speaking that you've done through the Journey of Hope, and you maybe have done speaking in other places, but to me, that's one of the most important things that we do, is the witness that you all make. And maybe you could give 1 or 2 examples of groups to whom you've spoken, or messages that you've gotten through.
Sure. With the Journey of Hope, I've spoken to a Catholic school, and as you can see, the memories never really dull the pain. And so when I talk and when I speak out against the death penalty, I let the memories flow. It's really special when you're able to speak to someone authentically and you're able to show the emotion that says, you know what, this is wrong and this is how it affects me and this is how it may affect you. When I've spoken to one particular example, and this was actually in the prison environment at Kairos, there was a guard that was standing above us. We do it in the gym, and she stood at the very top of the balcony type area of this gym. And I gave my testimony about my son, and then I went up to be prayed out up the stairs to the guard. The guard stopped me. Her son had been murdered as well, and she did not have this forgiveness. It was her only son. She didn't have the forgiveness, and her and I talked for a good long while so that she could figure out how to kind of release the pain that she was going and the environment that she was in with these women, some of whom had committed murder, was very hard on her, and she was very strict and unforgiving with these particular women. So talking through the experience can even change people's mind. You're up. Yes.
I was wondering how many, there's different chapters of Journey of Hope located in different communities. Is that the way the organization is structured?
I'll let Bob handle that one.
The Journey of Hope, let me give a quick background. As I said, the family members like Crystal and many others have been just vitally important voices in the movement against the death penalty. And in 1993, there was a 2-week-long speaking tour all across Indiana, also touched on Dayton and Louisville, Kentucky, and Chicago, in which the primary speakers were family members of murder victims, joined by many other allies and many others with direct experience of the death penalty. And that event was the initial activity, the initial launch of the Journey of Hope. A few years later, after every year doing another speaking tour in another different place, it became an organization, incorporated as a nonprofit organization, and has been continuing to bring this witness ever since 1993. Now, I was involved in helping organize that event in 93, and just in the last few years have come back as a volunteer with the organization, and so I am have the title of executive director, but that really is a volunteer who helps coordinate things for the organization. We are very small, all volunteer organization. There are members and persons who do the kind of speaking that we've been talking about all across the country, but there aren't local chapters. There are speakers available in many places, but one organization, one board, one volunteer leadership group. I should say also that not only has there been a pretty much annual speaking tour in the US, but also in several other countries, on at least 3 other continents. Journey of Hope has sent speakers, and it's not always one big speaking tour. Sometimes it's a matter of sending a couple of people to a state where the death penalty is being reevaluated in the state legislature and there's a bill to abolish it. And so when the voices of family members of those who have been murdered come alongside and say the death penalty does no good for us and it's no good for the society, that's an important message for legislators to hear. So there are many different ways the Journey of Hope brings that message.
And right now in Ohio, where I work at, we have 2 bills on the floor, Senate Bill 103 and House Bill 183, that we are looking to abolish the death penalty in Ohio. We think that if we do it in Ohio, it will have a nice ripple effect.
If a group wanted to have a speaker, how do they contact someone to do that?
Sure. That's the kind of thing where you would contact me, or if you, I mean, since I'm local and you know me, you can do that easily. But in general, people can go to our website, and that is www.journeyofhope.org. That website has the contact information and a contact form to request a speaker or to ask any other question about the organization. So through the website, by calling or by using the email address, people can make that request. and we basically always make it work out. Groups that can afford to pay an honorarium or reimburse for travel costs, we encourage them to do that. But we try to always make the connection to be able to send a speaker or do it online as we're doing today.
Thank you. We appreciate Crystal and what you have shared and giving us an idea of and awareness that this group is out there.
Thank you so much.
Crystal, is your family behind what you're saying?
Yes, they are. My surviving children, son and daughter, were not at first. They were angrier than I, but then they saw really the journey that I went through to even be able to get up in the morning. I remember it was some months and I laughed at something and I heard it was a foreign sound. It was just like, what is this in my head, this laughter? I hadn't had it for so long. So they know because I'm healed and they're, you know, well, healing. Are we ever healed? I am healing. They know that they are on that journey as well to healing.
I want to also thank you and so sorry for your loss. I wonder if it doesn't make it extra hard to know that there's somebody out there that hasn't been brought to justice.
It does make it hard, but it, you know, I just have to lean back on my spiritual beliefs and know that in some way that the vengeance is the Lord's. It's not mine. I don't know what's going to happen to the young man, and I pray that at some point he feels remorse for what he's done. But I can't worry about it. I can't spend my days worrying about what's happening to him. I just have to, we all love on his daughter. His daughter is now 10 years old and she is so much like him. It's like his spirit is living through her. So we go through that and we live through her.
You've talked about other family members. How is your daughter-in-law surviving it?
My daughter-in-law is surviving it okay. She's actually remarried. She has 2 additional girls, so she has a total of 4 girls. She's doing well. My granddaughter is amazing. She does things like, she used to be obsessed with balloons. And she would hate to lose a balloon. It would send her in a fit. Anyway, she lost the balloon at one point. And she was probably about 4 then. And she said, that's okay. Daddy will catch it in heaven. So it's those moments that she has with her dad that, you know, I still believe they have a strong connection.
It seems like in recent years, just the last year or two, there's been a large increase in murders in different localities here in Indiana and other places too. So I can imagine, sure there's a lot of people going through similar experiences now, more than there have been in the past. And that would certainly be a very tough thing to do. So I don't know whether that results in more opportunities for Journey of Hope for speaking and also recruiting. I'm not sure exactly if that's the right word to use, but I do want to thank you, Crystal, for sharing your story because it's tragic. And I congratulate you on your stand and your ability to cope with it and witness to that faith and that belief.
Crystal, one of the things that I'm aware of is just how parents never stop grieving. We have a woman here in our community, and it's the loss of a child. Just, you don't stop grieving.
Does your group reach out to new families who have experienced this murder? How does a family learn to know what you have to offer?
Do you want to respond there, Crystal, or do you want me
No,
to?
I'd love you to respond to that one. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's usually happens in the context of a speaking event. And it's been a real problem among all the many ways the pandemic has made our lives more difficult. For the Journey of Hope, it has been almost 2 years now since we've been able to actually have a speaker present in the room with an audience. The speaking that we've done in the last couple of years has been online, and as we're doing today. But when we have spoken to groups, and they might be school classes, they might be churches or other congregations, they might be university groups, and many other kinds of groups. When we speak, it's not unusual for someone to approach the speaker afterward and say, I just wanted to let you know this happened to me too. This happened in my family as well. And then that's usually the beginning of a very heart-to-heart conversation. And those are some of the ways that people find out about the Journey of Hope. We haven't been active in just outreach and recruitment, but we are organizing ourselves to be able to do that a little more intentionally now. Primarily, it's been when people meet one of our speakers in an event or in some other situation. As Crystal mentioned in when she was speaking at the prison, and the guard caught her attention afterward and talked about it.
Good. Yes, word of mouth and personal experience with hearing the stories means a lot.
Well, Crystal, I had another thing I wonder if you would say a little bit about when we know someone, an acquaintance or even a close friend, who loses a family member, whether it's to murder or perhaps in other cases, especially to lose a child, a son or daughter, often we don't know how to reach out or what to say or how to approach that person to let them know we care. And you can only speak for yourself because everyone's experience is a different life story. But do you have some thoughts about how people can be helpful to those who have had a tragic loss?
Do I ever? What an excellent question. I was actually going to write a book about it.
Oh.
and again, you touched on it when you said it's really a personal experience. So when I lost my son, even before I knew it was definite, I was looking online because I was in Indianapolis at the time at home, and I was looking online to see the news in Dayton, and they just said 28-year-old male murdered, and that was it. And I just was holding on to the hope that maybe my youngest son was wrong, because he had just heard it from, he was the first person I called. He had just heard it from someone that happened to be in Dayton. And then my parents called and I didn't even call them back. So I was hoping I was wrong, but then I started getting Facebook posts of sorry for your loss. Things like that. And I was like, who does that? Who does that on Facebook when I don't even know for sure? And that made me so upset because it was just like, okay, this is probably real, but I hadn't even had an opportunity to post my own feelings or thoughts. My daughter didn't know. She was on her way on a plane right back to Florida. She was in Kentucky and she had no idea. So if she had read the post, she would have been going, what is going on? So I had to hurry up and call her and tell her over the phone because I didn't want her to see what was going on social media. So tip number one, don't post it on social media until at least the family posts something about what's going on, because you don't know who doesn't know. And that's just not the way to find out. Secondly, I'm a pastor and I know, all of the Bible verses, but please don't tell me that my son's in a better place. I know he went to heaven. I know he was a believer, but I don't need you to tell me he's in a better place when he was 28 years old. And the better place I think that he could have been was raising his daughter and being present for his mother and his brothers and sisters and everyone that loved him. So I didn't really want to hear that. And I just pretty much walked out the room. So the best tips I can say is please don't tell those really tried responses that you have. And I'm sorry for your loss is really good. Or, my condolences, or, I really mean, what can I do? And maybe instead of saying, what can I do? Just do something, just bring food for the family, which is, a good response, or just sit there with the person and let them talk to you and listen intently instead of thinking that there's really something that you have to say, because there's really nothing tried and true that you could say that will probably bring that person. And thirdly, don't really avoid the person. Some people just really avoid it, talking to me about it. I know you know. So you don't, let me talk about it and let me call it what it is. It wasn't a death. It was a murder. I said that at a women's conference and they were like, murder is a really powerful word. I'm like, well, it's the only word to use because that's what it was. So, just really let that person express themselves as they need to express themselves. Like I said, and my husband's a pastor too, to say that. And I was so distraught for so long that another quick story is that I had just finished a chaplaincy course at St. Vincent's in Indianapolis. And one of my very first patients, when I had a shift on my own, one of my first patients, not very first, one of my first patients were parents that had just lost their 5-year-old daughter to cancer. And this happened about 2 weeks prior to my son being murdered. And I had to be present with these parents as they grieved their daughter and was holding their deceased daughter in their arms, asking me, what to do now. And I really didn't have, any answers. And I really didn't try to give them any crazy answers. I just, other than call your pastor, was there anything that I could say to them? All that saying that my husband being a pastor, he wasn't one that I really could talk to. I ended up having to go to a spiritual director. And that spiritual director let me be mad at God and angry at God and and didn't say, you can't be. He let me express feelings, and then he gently guided me into a more healing place and a more loving place and a more, it's not a why me place. And it just wasn't about me. It's just about the whole makeup and puzzle pieces that God puts together. But he had to let me get there, on a guided journey. So that's what I have.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any more questions for Crystal or Bob today, or comments from the steering committee folks? Okay, well, I want to thank both of you, Bob and Crystal, for sharing the information about Journey of Hope. And again, especially Crystal, sharing your personal story of loss and how you have been able to deal with it. Very, very powerful. And so we certainly are sad for your loss. And that would be extremely difficult, I'm sure, to go through that kind of an experience. This then concludes our program for today. Thank you all for watching.
Peace